Joining us on the line is Anthony Rubin, founder of muckraker.com, leading expert on the U.S. southern border crisis, one of the only journalists to have ever traveled and documented the entire mass migration route from Quito, Ecuador to the U.S. border. Anthony, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Ben. I appreciate it.
So let's talk about what that journey is like for people who are moving up from Ecuador to the U.S. border. It's supposed to be pretty horrifying, but you've actually traveled it. So what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story, but basically the whole world is flying into Quito, Ecuador, because it's got the easiest entry requirements basically of any country in the world. And then from there, they are crossing into Colombia illegally and trekking all the way up to the United States, country by country. Of course, crossing through the Darien Gap jungle, which we crossed through as well. I'm happy to get into the details of that. And, making the way all the way up here, of course, aided by the United Nations and associated organizations along the way.
So let's talk about some of those details. I mean, who actually is trafficking people? Are you moving along with drug cartels? At what point do drug cartels take over? Is it individuals? Is it groups? Like, how's this actually working?
Right. So there's this a lot of people think when you're talking to them about this that it's like one continuous caravan all the way from Ecuador to the U.S. border. It doesn't really work like that. It's a group that's continuously changing. So you'll be with one group entering the Darien Gap. Then you'll pop out, and then that group will kind of split apart as people travel at their own pace. Then another group will form, at the northern part of Panama, and then, a group will continue together. And then you'll get another caravan that'll form at southern Mexico. And so it's always kind of shifting and evolving. But as far as the groups that bring you through, for example, the groups that brought us through the Darien Gap, there's many routes that you could take through there. The route that we took was the route that is used by special interest aliens. That would be anybody that's coming from, countries that perhaps harbor terrorists, that, have state-sponsored terrorism. It could also be countries such as China, Russia, people that have a little bit more money. And so this route, what happens is you actually have to get smuggled into Panama by boat. So you actually are already starting in Panamanian territory, and then you actually trek east to west, still through the jungle until you hit Highway 1. And so that's the route that we took. And along that route, for example, basically it's indigenous tribes that are guiding you through the jungle. So it's a lot safer, quote unquote, but you could still die in there. These indigenous tribesmen are still armed. I mean, you could still get robbed in there. You still have to watch yourself in there because it's still incredibly dangerous. And then, of course, in Mexico, we ran into at least 3 cartels in Mexico.
So you've talked publicly about being kidnapped by a drug cartel. What was that like?
So basically what happened was we were going to cross into the United States right where Elon Musk's SpaceX is. That's in Boca Chica, Texas. And we are walking up this public Mexican beach, this public coastline right there next to the Gulf of Mexico. And we get picked up by this truck. I'm making a long story short, but we get picked up by this truck who tells us, you can't go any further. It's going to be trouble for you if you keep walking up there. This truck starts driving us back down south to where we came from and pulls up next to another pickup truck that's filled with 3 armed men. I mean, these are serious guys carrying assault rifles and with pistols at their hip. They just start screaming at us. They order us out of this one truck into their truck. And they drive us inland. And, we about 10 minutes inland, they pull us out of the truck, lay out all our stuff, where they then find our drone and our camera. And that now they're thinking that perhaps we're spying on them. They don't know what's going on. So they start searching us for wires. They put us on our knees. They take hostage type photos. And during this time, another truck with 4 more armed men has pulled up. So now there's 7 armed men surrounding us. And it's not looking good. I'm trying to keep my cool, but it's certainly, you start to realize that this situation is no longer in our hands, right? And what happens is they tie up our hands, they throw a blindfold on myself. My brother was wearing this pretty big jacket, so they just pull the hood over his head and they throw us in the back of the truck. And they say, you guys are now part of an investigation. We're going to see El Jefe. And we're talking to them. I'm trying to talk to them in broken Spanish. And I'm just saying, hey, how much money do you guys want? What can I, I'll pay my way out of this. What can we do for you guys? And they just won't have it. They're like, no, you're part of an investigation. We're going to see El Jefe. And I'm trying to whisper to my brother when we're in this truck. Of course, we can't see each other, but I'm whispering to him. I'm like, man, if you can start loosening up your hand straps, because I don't know if we're just going to have one go at this before they put a bullet in our head. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. And they're telling us, like, shut up, like, stop talking. Then eventually we're in the middle of it. The doors open up, the car stops. And we're in the middle of an empty field. and I'm not sure what's about to happen, but it doesn't look good, right? But they lay out all of our electronics and they take out a crowbar and they smash everything to bits and pieces, and then they load us into another car and drop us off at the port of entry and basically say, never come back here again.
Wow. Have you ever heard of data brokers? Those are the middlemen collecting and selling all those digital footprints you leave online. They can stitch together detailed profiles, which include your browsing history, online searches, location data. Then they sell your profile to a company that delivers you a targeted ad. No biggie, right? Well, you might be surprised to learn those same data brokers are also selling your information to the Department of Homeland Security and the IRS. To mask my own digital footprints, I protect myself with ExpressVPN. One of the easiest ways for brokers to aggregate data and tie it back to you is through your device's unique IP address, which also reveals information about your location. When you're connected to ExpressVPN, though, your IP address is hidden, which makes it way more difficult for data brokers to identify who you are. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of network traffic to keep your data safe from hackers on public Wi-Fi. That's why I have the ExpressVPN app downloaded on all my devices. You can use it with your phone, computer, even your home Wi-Fi router. All you need to do is tap one button to turn it on. You are now protected. It is indeed that easy. I use it. You should use it as well. Make sure your online activity and data is protected with the best VPN money can buy. Visit expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show right now. Get 3 extra months free through that special link. That's expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. It is amazing how much control over the trafficking the cartels have. And I think this is something that people really need to understand. I mean, I've been down to the southern border myself and been told by Border Patrol that this kind of vision that Americans have, that it's individuals who are sort of straggling over the border, is people who have made their way without being involved in the drug cartels. The drug cartels have total control over America's southern border. I wonder if that was your experience as well.
Absolutely. And, it's not just the southern border or the northern border of Mexico. It's throughout Mexico. I mean, the drug cartels are in control of that entire route. And what's incredible is you have the United Nations and associated organizations that are handing out maps, quote unquote, migration route maps that say, here's where you need to cross into Mexico. Here's the route you're going to, or the routes you can take through Mexico. Here's the different crossing points into the United States. And all of those points are controlled by the cartel. Right? It's known that if you're going to cross at any of those points, you're going to have to pay a human smuggler that is associated with a drug cartel. Of course, there's many of them. And, that's the only way you're actually going to be able to pass through. And so these quote unquote humanitarian organizations are really lining or helping to line the pockets of the cartel with millions, perhaps billions of dollars. That's not an estimate that I made up. I mean, those are legitimate estimates by people who have studied this and crunched the numbers. But for example, when we rode the Mexican train of death, that's the train that runs across Mexico. It's basically like a freight train, and you will see illegal aliens riding on the top of it. The men who loaded us up onto the top of that train were serious cartel men in the middle of the night. I mean, these are men that are entirely masked up. They're wearing body armor. They actually had swords tucked behind their body armor. And I wasn't aware what the swords were for at first. And then later I find out that's because if they need to kill somebody, they don't want to make any noise. That's why they have the sword. And of course, they're carrying, assault rifles or shotguns. And these are the men that are loading you up onto the train of death in the middle of the night. So there's nothing humanitarian about it. And yeah, all of Mexico, at least the parts where this route is going through, it's all controlled by the cartel.
Amazing. Well, in just the last couple of weeks, you guys have uncovered footage from inside New York's migrant shelters. What did you uncover at these migrant shelters? These are supposed to be nice places where people are being taken care of. What exactly is going on over there?
Well, what we uncovered were, migrant shelters that, of course, cost taxpayers millions of dollars. At one of the places that we uncovered, which is the Row Hotel in New York City, it's 1 block from Times Square, prime New York real estate, right? It's estimated that it costs around $500 per head per night to keep people in this hotel. And, you see the footage that we got that we obtained from that hotel and from 2 other massive compounds at Randall's Island and Floyd Bennett Field. And, in the footage, there's conversations with security guards where we're saying, what's going on? And they're talking to us about cases of domestic violence. They're talking about people who are bringing in weapons. There was a story about a man who ran into the hotel with a handgun. There's stories of people throwing themselves off the roof. There's stories of people slitting their wrist and nobody knows about it until they see blood, coming out from underneath the door. So it sounds like something from a horror movie, right? And, you go to, for example, Randall's Island, you look at that footage. That is primarily military-aged males, a lot of them from countries in Africa. I mean, these are men that don't speak a word of English. So it's really incredible when you see all this, and then you contrast that with, a couple blocks away, you have homeless Americans that are scavenging through dumpsters looking for a couple of morsels of food. And, right there next to that dumpster that they're going through is a hotel filled with illegal aliens from China, Russia, wherever else, getting free food and free accommodation. It's pretty incredible.
Well, that's Anthony Rubin. He's the founder of muckraker.com, doing amazing documentary work on all of this sort of stuff. Anthony, really appreciate the time and the insight.
Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate it.
Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.